This podcast has made quite a splash in the WNBA world, whether that's you being fined or just people like locking in. And Skip Bayless, the biggest shit talker, dumb in media. I watched the tape. It felt a little clickbaity headline-wise because he didn't.
Skip Bayless has made a career out of trash talk, but this time he picked the wrong target because when he called Sophie Cunningham a clout chaser and dragged Caitlyn Clark into it, the WNBA world exploded. Fans couldn't believe it. Headlines ran wild, and suddenly Sophie wasn't just fighting on the court, she was fighting for her name. And Caitlyn's...
I guess Sophie has blasted a lot of people on her new Show Me Something podcast. She says the WNBA has fined her after each of her first 3 podcasts. Wow. She says that proudly.
But instead of staying quiet, Sophie grabbed the mic on her own podcast and unleashed the truth. And what she revealed? It wasn't just about Skip Bayless, it was about Caitlyn Clark, the league, the hate, and the disrespect that women's basketball stars are done putting up with. Skip Bayless is no stranger to controversy. For decades, he's built his reputation on one thing: stirring the pot. From calling LeBron James the most overrated superstar in history to sparking heated debates with Stephen A. Smith, Skip has always thrived on one thing: attention. So when his headline about Sophie Cunningham popped up online, it felt like the same old playbook. The headline labeled Sophie a clout chaser, twisting her comments about Caitlyn Clark into something negative, and instantly the internet ran with it. Clips spread across Twitter, debate shows replayed it, and suddenly Sophie's name was trending for all the wrong reasons. But here's the twist most people missed. If you actually watched the full segment, Skip wasn't even going that hard at her. The clout chaser line, it was more clickbait than a real attack, but by the time it hit headlines, the damage was done. That's where Sophie stepped in. On her own podcast, she broke it down bluntly.
Skip, who's the clout chaser? You're literally using my name as your headline so people can click on it.
That one line flipped the narrative. Suddenly it wasn't Sophie chasing clout, it was Skip using her name, using Caitlyn's name just to rack up clicks and keep his brand alive.
Just remember, in her first 6 years in the WNBA playing for Phoenix, nobody outside of Phoenix knew who she was. Very few. She had been the first pick in the second round. She was no more than a part-time starter in Phoenix, and she averaged 8 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist in those 6 seasons.
And Sophie wasn't done. She made it clear she doesn't even care about Skip personally. She doesn't watch his shows, she doesn't follow his takes, but the moment he plastered her name online, that's when she knew she had to respond. Because this wasn't just about one headline, it was about respect, something Sophie has fought for her entire career. The term clout chaser has become one of the laziest insults in sports media. It's a way of saying someone is riding the wave of someone else's fame instead of earning their own. And when Skip Bayless dropped that label on Sophie Cunningham, it hit differently. Why? Because Sophie's entire identity as a player has been about grit, fight, and proving herself. She was never the one chasing cameras. Cameras just happened to follow her after Caitlyn Clark arrived and turned the WNBA into a national spotlight. But the headlines didn't capture that nuance. Instead, they made it sound like Sophie was hanging on to Caitlyn's success to stay relevant. Fans who didn't even watch Fever games piled on, tweeting things like, "She averages 8 points a game, who cares?" Or, "Nobody knew her name until Caitlyn showed up." And that's exactly why Sophie fired back.
I don't mind the guy. I don't mind the guy. I have no beef with you. I've never met you. I've actually really never listened to you. I just am kind of in my lane. And someone sent it to me and I was like, what is this? He's calling me a clout chaser. Dude, you're the one who has my name plastered all over your freaking YouTube that had 36 views. Get out of here.
That line wasn't just funny, it was devastating. Because in one punch, Sophie turned the accusation on its head. Who's really chasing clout? The player who's been grinding on the court for years? Or the media personality dragging her name into headlines just to boost his own views? Sophie even admitted she doesn't take Skip seriously. But what she does take seriously is the idea that women's basketball players can't stand on their own. And if Skip thought she'd let that slide, he was wrong. Because in Sophie's world, defending Caitlyn Clark isn't clout chasing, it's telling the truth. If there's one thing you need to know about Sophie Cunningham, it's this: she doesn't hold back. On the court, she's feisty. Off the court, she's blunt. And when Skip Bayless threw her name around, she didn't just shrug it off, she went straight at him.
I listened to it and I think he was being complimentary in some areas, which I guess thank you, but for people who know me and people who've actually been paying attention to basketball before Caitlyn got here, or when she did get here, they started paying attention to everyone. I've always been this way. Like, I've always been like, in college, I was that way. Don't mess with my teammates. Don't mess with me. Don't mess with my teammates. I'm feisty. I'm sassy. I'm goofy. Like, I'm probably the most unserious person that you'll ever meet. And people who don't know me probably think that, like, I'm a big bitch, which I can probably understand that. But like him coming at me, and I'm like, dude, you just sound so typical. So just get off my screen. I stopped watching it.
That line sums her up perfectly. Sophie isn't interested in playing the media game. She isn't going to politely nod when someone tries to diminish her. She calls it like she sees it, and that's exactly what gets her fined. In fact, Sophie admitted the same attitude that makes her a fan favorite is the one that sometimes lands her in trouble with the league. She doesn't fake emotions. If she's angry, you'll see it. If she's frustrated, she'll say it. And that honesty, it's rare in a sports world where most athletes stick to the same safe, media-trained answers. But here's the key. Sophie made it clear she's not losing sleep over Skip Bayless. He's not the reason she plays. He's not the reason she shows up for her teammates. If anything, his comments just gave her more fuel. Because while Skip was trying to paint her as a clout chaser, Sophie reminded everyone that she's been this way long before Caitlyn Clark came to the W. The fight, the fire, the energy, it's who she is. And now, she was about to flip the conversation entirely. Because this story wasn't just about Sophie, it was about Caitlyn Clark, and why defending her is bigger than any Skip Bayless headline.
And she got traded to Caitlyn Clark's team. By far the biggest stage in the league, thanks to Caitlyn Clark. And did Sophie Cunningham ever start taking advantage of that? She quickly befriended Caitlyn. That was smart.
When Sophie fired back at Skip, she didn't just defend her own name, she defended Caitlyn Clark. Because let's be real, the moment Caitlyn stepped into the WNBA, everything changed. Ticket sales skyrocketed. Ratings hit all-time highs. Entire arenas sold out not just once, but night after night. And Sophie made it clear only someone blind to the game would deny what Caitlyn has done.
Have people tried to use your proximity to joining a superstar to like diminish your, not legacy, but like your ability to play basketball, your ability to be your own brand, your ability to be your own person?
Yeah. Here's my thing. People are like Skip and others like, oh, she's just stagnant. No, I actually like Caitlyn. And I'm just being real and truthful that she has brought millions. I wouldn't be surprised if it's billions of eyes onto the W and onto women's sports. Like, she is a Kobe Bryant.
That's the line that cut through the noise because Sophie wasn't exaggerating. She compared Caitlyn's arrival to the same cultural shifts created by Kobe Bryant, Diana Taurasi, or Sue Bird. Legends who didn't just play the game, they expanded it. And here's what makes Sophie's words even more powerful. She has no ego about it. She didn't try to downplay Caitlyn's success or pretend it threatened her own. Instead, she doubled down on the truth. Caitlyn's spotlight shines on everyone in the league. That's where Skip Bayless completely missed the point.
And that's how Diana was. That's how Sue was. Like, we've had these types of people, but this is just bigger because the media platform is bigger than it ever has been. And so I don't know if I'm only ones who are, I don't have an ego, so I'm able to just tell the truth. Like, if it was someone else, I'd be like, yeah, like Angel Reese, she's also brought millions of fans. You know what I mean? I think Caitlyn has brought way more, but I also think she has too. Like, I'm just not naive, and I might be blonde, but I'm not fucking dumb. So people who say I'm a clout chaser, no, I'm just being honest about why the league is where it is at. Like, give the girls the flowers. Like, give it to them. They deserve it.
What he called clout chasing was really just respect. Sophie isn't riding Caitlyn's fame. She's acknowledging how one player's influence lifts the entire WNBA. And if that honesty makes people uncomfortable, Sophie couldn't care less because in her mind, defending Caitlyn Clark isn't about chasing clout. It's about protecting the game, protecting her teammate, and making sure the WNBA finally gets the credit it deserves. Once the clip hit social media, the reaction was instant. Sports pages plastered headlines like Skip Bayless calls Sophie Cunningham a clout chaser, and fans rushed to the comments section. For most people, that was all they needed to see. Suddenly, Sophie wasn't being judged for her play, her leadership, or her impact. She was being judged by a single phrase taken out of context.
She assumed the role of Caitlyn's on-court and in interviews defender and protector or public defender. Did that ever quickly endear her to Caitlyn's, billions of fans out there?
Some fans piled on, mocking her numbers or saying she was only relevant because of Caitlyn Clark, but others saw right through the spin. They noticed the bait. They realized Skip wasn't just analyzing basketball. He was using names like Sophie and Caitlyn to stir controversy and get clicks. And that's where the tide began to turn. On Twitter, fans started flipping the narrative. Wait a second, who's really chasing clout here? The player grinding every night or the TV host milking her name for views? Others defended Sophie's bluntness, praising her for standing up to Skip when so many athletes usually stay silent. Clips from her podcast response spread quickly, with fans calling it the most authentic thing they'd heard all season. Even neutral fans admitted the so-called clout chaser label didn't hold up, because the truth was clear. Sophie didn't need to chase anything. The media came to her, and just like that, the spotlight that Skip tried to control ended up backfiring. Instead of embarrassing Sophie, it gave her the perfect stage to remind people who she really is. For casual fans, Sophie Cunningham might seem like just another name on the roster, but anyone who's actually watched her play knows that couldn't be further from the truth. Sophie has built her entire career on being the spark, the fighter, the emotional engine that keeps her team alive. She's not always the one dropping 30 points a night, but she's the player who dives for loose balls, takes charges, and sets the tone with pure energy, and the numbers back it up. Toward the end of the season, Sophie was averaging double figures and shooting some of the best percentages in the league from three. In fact, for stretches, she led the WNBA in three-point efficiency. That's not clout, that's production.
Whatever. And then when people like come at me and like, oh, she averages 8 points a game and I'm like, yeah, and how many pro sports minutes have you played? Like, and what do? You're sitting on your couch just talking shit on me. All right, well, you bringing attention to me, you're making me more money, so keep talking your shit. But my thing is also, like, if you really do your research, like, I don't know, I've been shooting the shit out of the ball. Like, I've been playing good basketball. It's not all about scoring. Like, I've literally been the glue to our team. Like, I'm our energy. I know what I bring to the table.
But it's not just about stats. Sophie's personality is what sets her apart. She's goofy, she's sassy, and she's unapologetically herself. To fans who don't know her, that confidence sometimes comes off as cocky. To teammates, it's the exact opposite. It's what makes her invaluable. That's why the clout chaser insult rang so hollow. Sophie doesn't need Caitlyn Clark to validate her career. She's been this way since college, when she was already known as a fiery competitor who never backed down. And that's what Skip Bayless and casual fans missed. Sophie isn't defined by Caitlyn Clark. She's defined by her fight, her fire, and the respect she's earned the hard way. The truth is, Skip Bayless calling Sophie a clout chaser isn't just about one player. It's part of a much bigger problem. For years, women's basketball players have been disrespected not just by critics online, but by the way the media frames their stories. Men get praised for being fiery, competitive, and outspoken. Women get called cocky, unlikable, or in Sophie's case, clout chasers. And it's not just the media. Even inside arenas, you can feel the double standard. When Caitlyn Clark takes a hard foul, the crowd gasps, fans debate, but refs often swallow the whistle. When Sophie shows emotion, she's labeled dirty or over the top. The exact same behavior that's celebrated in men's sports is used to tear women down in the W.
So you trying to come at me, you will never get to me, because first of all, I don't care enough. And second of all, who are you? Like, I just get two shits. And I think that's my best attribute is I don't give a shit. And sometimes that's why I get fined, because I don't give a shit. So for people who come at me about that type of stuff, good for you. Like, I hope you got your rocks off.
That line says it all. Sophie isn't pretending to be something she's not. She's the same fiery competitor she was in college. The only difference now is that millions of new fans are finally watching because of Caitlyn Clark's impact, and with that attention comes louder critics. And that's why Sophie's response matters. She wasn't just clapping back at Skip Bayless. She was standing up for every player who's had their personality twisted into a headline, every competitor told they're too much, and every woman who's been asked to tone it down while men get applauded for the exact same thing. Because in Sophie's mind, this fight isn't just hers. It's the WNBA's. If you think the criticism bothers Sophie Cunningham, think again, because while some athletes get rattled by headlines, Sophie almost thrives on them. The hate doesn't break her, it energizes her. In her own words, she doesn't lose sleep over people sitting on their couches talking trash. If anything, it's free publicity. That's vintage Sophie. She doesn't run from controversy, she flips it into motivation, and that's exactly why she's dangerous. Every jab, every insult, every fine she's had to pay has only added to her edge. Fans might call her reckless, refs might call her too physical, but Sophie calls it passion. And if that passion gets her labeled a villain by some, she's fine with that role, because the truth is, every great team needs that spark. The one player who won't back down no matter what. It's the same fire that makes her a nightmare for opponents and a fan favorite in Indiana. People might come for her stats, but they can't ignore her impact. She's the kind of player you love if she's on your team and hate if she's not, and that's the part Skip Bayless and his critics never understood. Sophie doesn't need their approval. She's built her brand on authenticity, on being the glue, and on embracing the chaos. Because at the end of the day, Sophie Cunningham isn't chasing clout, she's chasing wins. And the louder the noise gets, the harder she plays. At the end of the day, Skip Bayless calling Sophie Cunningham a clout chaser didn't silence her, it amplified her. Because instead of ignoring it, Sophie flipped the script. She reminded the world that defending Caitlyn Clark isn't about chasing fame, it's about telling the truth. She reminded fans that she's more than a role player, more than a headline. She's the glue, the energy, and the fighter every team needs. And maybe most importantly, she reminded the WNBA that respect has to be earned, not granted by critics behind a desk. In a way, Skip Bayless handed her the perfect opportunity. What was supposed to be an insult turned into a platform, and Sophie used it to defend her teammate, defend her league, and defend herself in the most authentic way possible. And honestly, that's why fans are connecting with her more than ever. She's not afraid to laugh, clap back, or even take a fine if it means staying true to who she is. But here's the thing, you haven't heard the full story yet. Because if you thought Sophie's response to Skip was bold, wait until you hear what she revealed next about her battles on the court and behind the scenes.